There's a reason the ending of La La Land sticks, even if you haven't watched the film in years. It feels complete, not happy, not tragic, just settled. And that sense of completion is exactly what I want to talk about. Because while the ending resolves the outcomes beautifully, the careers, the timing, the shape of the life, it largely avoids what those choices cost Mia and Sebastian's as people. It's a great ending, I'm just not sure it's a fully honest one. This is a film that stays very close to its two central characters while remaining careful about how much it explains their choices. La La Land follows Mia, an aspiring actress, and Sebastian, a jazz musician, as they try to establish themselves in Los Angeles. Mia works a series of temporary jobs while attending auditions, and Sebastian moves between short term gigs while holding on to a specific idea of what his music should be. Their lives are shaped by unstable work, financial pressure, and limited professional recognition, and most of their efforts fail to produce lasting momentum. As these conditions repeat, opportunities arrive inconsistently and often disappear just as quickly. Attempts to gain stability tend to collapse or redirect, and both characters are forced to make practical decisions that conflict with their original plans. Support comes unevenly and progress is difficult to sustain. Eventually, a series of career decisions and personal shifts push the story into a more settled phase. Ambition moves out into the open and relationships begin to bend around it. Before getting into where the unease come from, it's worth acknowledging what the film actually gets right. La La Land understands longing with unusual precision. It understands how ambition reshapes memory. It understands how people don't just remember the past, they edit it, soften it, turn it into something survivable. The final sequence works because it doesn't argue with the audience. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't insist on being correct. It simply presents an alternative life as something half remembered, not a fantasy, but a reconstruction. That's difficult to do without tipping into sentimentality, and the film avoids it through restraint. The montage feels controlled rather than indulgent, specific rather than abstract. This matters because it builds trust. The film earns the right to ask us for emotional buy-in. But emotional fluency is not the same thing as emotional accounting, and that difference becomes clearer when we slow down and look at who Mia and Sebastian are allowed to become. Mia's arc is the cleaner of the two, and that cleanliness is precisely what makes it feel incomplete. From the beginning, her goal is clear and relatable. She wants to act, not fame exactly, legitimacy, to be chosen, to be taken seriously by a system that keeps telling her she's interchangeable. The film captures the emotional texture of early failure well. Auditions blur together, feedback becomes generic, rejection stops feeling personal and starts feeling ambient, like weather. When her breakthrough finally arrives, it feels earned. She persists, she risks embarrassment, she creates her own opportunity instead of waiting for permission. That arc satisfies us because it mirrors how we want effort to work. But once Mia succeeds, something subtle happens. The film stops tracking her interior life. Her doubts evaporated quickly. Her sense of self stabilizes almost instantly. Success becomes confirmation rather than disruption. We don't see her renegotiate her relationship to the work. We don't see how being accepted reshapes what she's willing to tolerate or compromise on or ignore. Psychologically, this is where most real transformation happens. Not at the moment of success, but afterward, when identity has to catch up to outcome. The film skips that phase. When people succeed after a long period of rejection, they often reinterpret their struggle retroactively. The loneliness becomes necessary. The compromises become worth it. The pain becomes proof of authenticity rather than something that left a mark. That kind of self-narrative is comforting. It allows success to feel clean. But it also flattens the person who lived through it. By not lingering in that adjustment period, The film lets Mia arrive fully formed, without showing the quiet cost of reconciling who she was with who she's become. Mia doesn't just get what she wants, she gets it without visible residue, without the awkward period where ambition and reality stop lining up cleanly. Her ending makes sense, it just doesn't feel fully lived in. Sebastian's arc is more visibly conflicted, but it's also more carefully insulated. He's introduced as someone defined by refusal, by what he won't play, what he won't become, what he believes authenticity requires him to give up. That rigidity is part of his identity and part of his appeal. Over time, he compromises. He joins a band he doesn't respect, he plays music that contradicts his ideals, he accepts visibility on terms he once rejected outright. What's important is how the film frames these moments. They aren't treated as failures of character, they are treated as delays, temporary deviations on the way to something purer. By the end, Sebastian gets his club, he gets his vision back, and crucially, he gets it without having to publicly reevaluate who he was along the way. There is very little sense that compromise changed him, or that it needed to. Psychologically, this is comforting. Patience implies growth through waiting. Avoidance implies growth never actually happened. The film leans toward patience. It suggests that if you hold on long enough, the world will eventually reward you without asking you to change. That's reassuring, but also evasive. Most compromises don't disappear once they are no longer required. They shape how people see themselves. They leave behind quiet adjustments in value and expectations. The film never fully asks whether Sebastian learned something, or whether the world simply waited until it could reward him without asking for growth. That ambiguity makes his ending feel complete, but it also feels strangely untouched by time. Together, Mia and Sebastian form a relationship defined by encouragement. They believe in each other early, they push each other forward, they act as witnesses to each other's ambition when no one else does. This is a generous portrait of love, and it's part of why the relationship is so appealing. What's missing is accumulation. Their conflict rarely compound. Arguments don't calcify into patterns. Sacrifices don't harden into resentment. When they drift apart, it's framed as timing rather than tension, as inevitability rather than incompatibility. Emotionally, this creates a graceful separation, but also a protective one. It's easier to believe relationships fail because of circumstance rather than character. Psychologically, grace can be a form of avoidance. By framing the relationship as something that simply couldn't survive success, the film spares both characters from confronting how they might have failed each other in smaller, more personal ways. Timing lets everyone remain good. It allows love to exist without blame. It preserves memory. The ending montage reinforces this. It presents an idealized alternate life, not to suggest regret, but to provide closure. What we see isn't what they lost, it's what they choose to remember. And memory, especially when it's comforting, is rarely complete. Despite all of this, the ending works, and it's important to understand why. It works because it aligns with how people actually make peace with the past. We don't usually resolve our lives by accounting for every compromise. We resolve them by building narratives that let us move forward. The film gives us emotional closure without emotional confrontation. It allows love to exist without blame. It allows success to arrive without visible cost. That restraint feels generous, it feels humane, but it also comes with a trade-off. By smoothing over the personal consequences of ambition, the film stops short of a deeper reckoning with how success reshapes identity. What we are left with is resolution without residue. La La Land is a film that understands emotion more deeply than consequence. It resolves its characters' dreams with elegance. It treats love with tenderness rather than bitterness. It chooses grace where other films choose confrontation. And in doing so, it becomes slightly less honest than it could have been. Not because the ending is wrong, but because it's gentler than the story that leads to it. It's a beautiful ending, just not quite as brave as the film that earned it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.